A Brooklyn grand jury has handed up an indictment in the case of an 18-year-old woman who said she was raped by two New York City police officers after they took her into custody and searched her for drugs, a person familiar with the case said on Friday. At least one of the detectives has been charged by the grand jury, which has been hearing evidence since the alleged assault on September 15, said the person familiar with the case, who spoke on the condition of anonymity because the charges have not been formally announced. Both detectives, Edward Martins and Richard Hall, were suspended without pay on Friday, a sanction usually reserved for officers who have been charged with crimes, police officials said. They had been stripped of their guns and badges and placed on modified duty soon after the allegations emerged. But the specific charges are not expected to become public until at least early next week, when the indictment is likely to be unsealed. A lawyer for the woman said she was handcuffed during the ordeal and went immediately to her mother after the officers released her without charging her with any crime, officials said. Her mother took her to Maimonides Medical Center in the Borough Park neighborhood, where she was treated. The incident spawned both the grand jury hearings and a police internal affairs investigation. The Brooklyn District Attorney's Office declined to comment on whether the detectives had been charged. Mark Abadaro, the lawyer for Detective Martins, said, "We are going to vigorously contest these charges in a court of law, rather than the court of public opinion." Mr. Badaro declined further comment, including on when or whether his client might be asked to surrender to the police. John Arlia, a lawyer for Detective Hall, did not immediately return a call seeking comment. The indictment was first reported by the New York Post on Friday. The detective's supervisor, Sergeant John Espy, was placed on modified duty after the allegations came to light. He has not been accused of being present for any encounter between the detectives and the 18-year-old woman. Michael David, the young woman's lawyer, said that the on-duty detectives had kidnapped his client off the street and attacked her while she was handcuffed. "I don't think a gang rape has ever been reported in the history of the NYPD," Mr. David said. Mr. David said the young woman was weary from waiting weeks for some sort of action by prosecutors. She was getting more frustrated by the day. "This has been going on for 6 weeks already, and it just seemed she was crying for help," Mr. David said. "She's crying, she's depressed," Mr. David said, adding that this crime has put a strain on her relationship with her parents, who have been supportive. She spends almost the whole day in her room. Detectives Hull and Martins were assigned to the Brooklyn South Narcotics Unit, which, about a decade ago, came under scrutiny for corruption. Hundreds of criminal cases in Brooklyn were dismissed after prosecutors and internal police investigators uncovered a scandal in which members of the Brooklyn South Narcotics Unit were seizing drugs to bribe alleged criminals. More recently, the department's efforts to sweep away the scourge of drugs have led instead to scores of low-level arrests, often of street addicts in need of treatment. Such enforcement is a friction against a countervailing priority for the police to decriminalize addiction and offer treatment rather than arrest as a way to tackle an ongoing opioids crisis that has led to increasing numbers of fatal overdoses in New York. The details of the alleged rape case have emerged in fragments and the picture remains incomplete. Mr. David said the attack occurred around 8 p.m. on a muggy Friday night. He added that the detectives were in plainclothes, in an unmarked police van, when they stopped the woman and two male friends in a car in Calvert-Vaux Park in the Coney Island area of Brooklyn. Mr. David said the detectives initially searched the occupants of the car for drugs and then demanded that the woman lift her shirt. They said, "We want to make sure there is nothing under there, so show it," Mr. David said, recounting his client's account. "She was petrified, so she showed it. She said, "See, I'm not hiding anything," but the officers ordered the woman out of the car, handcuffed her and placed her into the back seat of their black Dodge van," Mr. Davis said. She was told she would be driven to the 60th Precinct Station House, about a mile and a half from the park. Instead, the lawyer said, the detectives drove the woman to a parking lot of a nearby Chipotle restaurant, where they raped her. After 40 minutes, he said, the detectives took the handcuffs off the woman and released her from the van, not far from the precinct station house. A version of this article appears in print on October 28, 2017, on page A15 of the New York edition with the headline, "Jury is said to issue indictment in Brooklyn detective's rape case."